Welcome back to the Wine Crush. I'm Laura Lawson, and we are off and rolling on an entertaining show. For our loyal listeners, you will remember that we had Benjamin Wallace on the show probably close to a year ago when Billionaire's Vinegar had just come out. We are fortunate today. He is going to rejoin us and talk a little bit more about the saga going on. Benjamin, welcome to the Wine Crush.
Thanks, Laura. Good to be back.
It's nice to have you back. How are your holidays going?
Getting ready to head off to see my family, so everything's good so far.
All right. Well, you are off and rolling. Well, I was laughing the other day. I was wandering through the bookstore, and sure enough, I saw Billionaire's Vinegar in paperback. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So when can we...
For, I guess, 7 months.
Okay. Well, when can we expect to hear more about the saga? All you have to do is pick up the wonderful Wine Speculator right now, and you see the big stories. Bill Koch stepping forward. What do you think about that, and how is that going to affect our hopefully, a second volume?
Well, the story, since I finished the book, the story has just continued to unfold, and given the number of lawsuits Bill Koch has going and the pace at which they're moving, I think it will be another several years before this thing is over, at the earliest. The initial lawsuit that he filed was against Hardy Rodenstock, the German, quote-unquote, discoverer of these Jefferson bottles, and that lawsuit is still going on and is just, moving at a snail's pace, and it still looks like it's probably going to end in a default judgment, meaning Rodenstock basically isn't fighting the suit, and Koch will get a victory in a U.S. court. But even if that happens, actually winning any kind of assets, or a judgment against Rodenstock that can be enforced in Europe is a whole other thing.
It's a straw man victory. For our listeners, Benjamin Wallace wrote the book Billionaire's Vinegar, and what the story was about was the fact that wine consumers were getting defrauded, that they were buying fakes, they were buying wines that had been modified, flat out changed detrimentally. And of course, we're not talking about $10 or $15 bottles here. We're talking $156,000 bottles. So it became really a heart of a financial crisis in the sense that people are scared to put their wines up at auction. People are getting hesitant. Now, Benjamin, on that, you have to admit that you're kind of the catalyst of all this. As we look at auction results dropping every month, what are you thinking about that? Did Billionaire's Vinegar have a play there?
I'm sure it played some role, but I think the real catalyst was Bill Koch's lawsuit. My book actually began independently of him, and then it just turned out that he happened to launch an investigation and file these lawsuits. But I think it's really the lawsuits that have gotten the most attention and have probably, put the fear of God into the auction houses a lot more than, a book has done, because they're all afraid of being sued. And in fact, at least 2 of them have already been sued by Koch. So that's really causing a lot of them to, be more careful about what they're putting up for auction, offer more disclosure in their auction catalogs, and basically do anything they can to avert further lawsuits.
Have you had people call out and come to you and say, hey, listen, I was involved in this too, and tell you other stories?
I wish. I have not. I've had people who, were sort of part of the story who I've crossed paths with like that, but no one, has come forward and said, oh, I was an accomplice, I was there in the cellar, pouring creme de cacao into the mix to make it taste older, unfortunately. But if anyone listening to this would like to, please contact me.
Absolutely, or feel brave. You can call in anonymously to the Wine Crush, 877-4CRUSH-1, and we will pass it on. When you're thinking about all this, when you're looking at whether it's the auction records or people faking wine, what is your personal slant on this? Is this something that's going to become more and more common, or is it going to come to a screeching halt now?
Well, it's hard to say. My book dealt with really old and rare wines, and I think that will largely come to a halt because I think, there was only a limited amount of that stuff. It's increasingly old. There's now tons of skepticism about bottles from, let's say before 1950. And everyone's on high alert about the possibility of counterfeiting. And so I think, that particular issue will be less of a problem in the future. But with younger vintages, which in some ways, are easier to fake the labels of because, creating sort of a look of age is a lot harder than creating something that looks brand new. I think that, will continue to be a problem and still, continues to be a problem right now.
I think it's something we will definitely encounter, although I think people are being much more cautious these days. As you look ahead and try and plan your next study, I know that you were never a wine person before you wrote the book. Do you find yourself continuing to learn more about wine?
I do. I didn't know that much when I started. I was sort of an interested beginner, and in the course of working on the book, I took some classes, and I interviewed a lot of people in the wine world and drank a fair amount of, pretty good wine, although less than I had hoped. I thought everyone was going to be popping open their best bottles for me. That didn't really happen, but I got to taste some good wine. But one actually unforeseen effect of the book was I ended up writing not another wine story, but a story about another alleged con in the world of memorabilia, but this time it was for baseball memorabilia. Just an auctioneer in that world read the book and called me up and said, hey, the exact same thing is happening to me. So I just wrote a story about that. So maybe my specialty going forward is going to be memorabilia con artists rather than wine.
Well, you can be our detective. You can be the watchdog and keep your eye out and let all of us know where we might run into problems. This may put you on the case. This may put you on the spot a little bit, but I think I read recently that Michael Broadbent is suing your publisher.
He did. He sued Random House, claiming that he had been defamed. He sued them in the UK, which has libel laws which are much more favorable to plaintiffs than American libel laws. And the publisher and Mr. Broadbent actually came to a settlement a couple months ago where he was paid an undisclosed sum of money, and Random House offered an apology. At the same time, Random House is making no changes to the book and is going to continue to publish it everywhere in the world other than the UK. So I think that tells you, exactly what Random House thinks about Mr. Broadbent's claims.
Exactly. What do you think about Mr. Broadbent's claims?
I think they're unfortunate because, I actually feel sort of sorry for Michael Broadbent. I don't think he acted with any malice in auctioning off these older bottles, but, I do think he, perhaps looking back, should have asked more questions and perhaps should not have auctioned the bottles. And I don't think that the book portrays him as having acted with malice. And
I don't think it does.
Though, is that, he is, the book does make him look like someone who maybe made some poor judgments. And he obviously doesn't like that, and he's looking to blame somebody, and so he decided to sue. It's unfortunate. I'm glad at least I was not personally sued, but I feel badly for my publisher that they had to spend a lot of money just to deal with the situation.
Well, it's always nice when you can actually have someone who will stand up for you. Well, Benjamin, thank you very much for being part of the Crush today. I'm anxiously awaiting to hear more on these stories, and hopefully when we do, we'll have you join us again.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me.
Benjamin, I hope you have a great holiday, and we